Okay, hello, it's Jonathan Clark, and what I'm doing with this project is I filmed a day in the life of a supervisor. So basically I wore a camera on my head for an entire 16 hours roughly, and kept it going, and it's because I've had a lot of people ask me what I do all day. Now some people I think assume I just sit in camp and eat cookies all day, and they don't know how I fill my time. Other people are the exact opposite. They don't know how I fit everything in the course of a day that I normally have to do because they see me in all sorts of different places. So anyway, this is a full day in the life of a supervisor of a tree planting camp, and what I've done is I've compressed it all, so it's about 14 to 16 times normal speed. So this whole video will go through my day in exactly 1 hour, and I'll do some voice commentary over top to let you know what's going on. So far what's happened, I got up early, and I usually get up around 5 to 5:30, and sometimes do a little bit of paperwork before I come out and talk to the cooks and the planters and stuff like that. Anyway, so I got up early, did a bit of paperwork, put the camera on, went outside to check the weather. This was the day after a day off, and we were supposed to fly today. And so first thing I did was check the weather, and we were not going to be flying today because there was too much fog in the air, and a helicopter can't really lift off or land easily in the fog. So after that, brushed my teeth while I was talking to Andrew. He needed an area map. Went out to start my truck, make sure it runs. Took some antihistamines, checked my phone messages on both phones, called the pilot, talked to him, and confirmed that we weren't flying. Zach's one of my foremen. He mentioned we might need an extra truckload of trees on his block, so made some arrangements there. Went to check the cooler temperatures because we were having problems with our coolers. Checked out the lunch table, hung out in the kitchen for a minute, talked to the assistant cook, Ariane, about some day off gossip that I missed because I was off doing other stuff, trying to see who hooked up with who was hungover, who ended up with run-ins with the police, that sort of stuff. Sean was fueling up the ETV from Shelley's Tidy Tank. It's a little bit less bad weather, so I was kind of second guessing my decision to fly. There was some hints of sunshine there. Looking at the numbers with Shelley, trying to figure out what Shelley would be doing for the day, moving some trees. I just got Sean to sign some paperwork there. Okay, so now we're getting caught up. Coming out, talking to Zach for a second. He mentioned there were some drunk rednecks in camp last night on some quads. And so we should be careful about our own quads in camp, make sure they're locked up at night in case one gets stolen. Talking to Andrew, another foreman, about some blocks and marking some sizes on some blocks for him. Moving some recyclables into my truck. Normally we would have those dropped off on the day off, but he ran into some problems, comedy of errors with truck repairs and whatnot, so he couldn't get them to the recycle place, so I was going to take those today. Explained my contingency plan to Andrew since we couldn't fly. Telling Wilson how we're going to get some more trees to him. There's an antihistamine for Chloe right there. Talking to Chris Larson, one of my new planters, just chatting with him for a minute. Yeah, I'm getting caught up now. Talking to Dylan for a little bit about filming. He's a film student, and he helped me out with a lot of my filming this summer. Much appreciated. So next, what's going to happen here, I'm talking to all five of my foremen, Zach, Andrew, Mike, Sean, and Wilson, about the plan for the day to make sure they're on the same page. And then we had a camp meeting. So I introduced Chris Lawson, who was a new planter, told everyone that we're not flying today, contrary to previous plans because of the weather. So I gave them a new plan for the day. We had some contingency blocks in the back of our mind anyway, so you know, with helicopters you always have to assume something's going to go wrong, so it's always good to have a backup plan. So then I also talked about the plan for the rest of the month. We also had a safety audit coming up the following day, so you can see here I'm going through some notes and talking about some stuff that people should know about for that safety audit. The first part of the day as a supervisor is always the busiest. I find that some mornings I'm answering 100 questions between the time I get up and by the time the trucks leave in the morning. So I sometimes wish I could get paid by the question. Anyway, so the first part of the day here is a little bit more intense than later in the day when you'll see I'll be doing a little bit of driving around and whatnot. So still working at the camp meeting. Answering a few last minute questions from people now. People are breaking up, getting into the trucks, getting ready to go. And there you go. You can see me filling out my logbook for the day. Real pain in the ass. Okay, there was Jess. Jess is our head cook for the second half of the summer. And she mentioned we've got a propane tank that's out of fuel. And there's we're getting a little bit low on jerry cans. That's normally stuff that I try to take care of most of the time. But because I was doing something else on the day off, I didn't get it done. So I'll do it today. And you probably just saw me hooking up the tow chain for a second. Andrew's truck got stuck in camp, a little bit muddy. So I had to get him pulled out to get his day started. So right now I'm heading to the shade tent. Our shade tent, in the summer, our trees are living, growing things. Oh, here I'm finishing my logbook. In the summer, the trees are living and growing. They've been hot lifted. They've been growing since, say, March. And so you don't want to keep them in closed boxes because they're living things. They generate heat and the boxes heat up quite a bit. So what happens for the summer trees is they get spread out in a cache on the ground, put a tarp over them or something so they don't get direct sunlight, but basically all the boxes have to be open. That's a contrast with the spring trees, which were grown in the fall, and then they're packed into boxes and put into a big cooler, like a freezer for the winter. So they're actually frozen and they're dormant when they come to us in the spring. And instead of leaving them spread out on the ground with open boxes, we keep them in a reefer to keep them cool, and they're just very gradually, slowly warmed up. Anyway, yeah, so here I'm checking the loading of the trees in the morning, making sure everyone's taking the proper request keys. Quite often the foreman will try to load trees at night. They're really big fans of that. They don't want to waste the crew's time in the morning. But occasionally that can't happen. Sometimes with summer trees, the foresters don't allow us to load up at night. And also on this contract, the cache was just so muddy at this point that it was almost impossible for a foreman to load a truck by himself. He needed help from other people. So unfortunately in July we had to do a bit of crew loadings in the mornings. So here I had to drop off the carousel for the helicopter out at the staging site. It was in the back of my truck and I didn't really want to be driving around with that all day while I was doing other stuff. Look at this puddle. This was a big puddle. Yeah, so I'm going out to drop off the carousel. It's not just a little hook. It's the big 6-hook or 8-hook carousel. Pretty heavy. So I'm just lugging it over into the bushes, and we'll be using it tomorrow. But at least now the back of my truck's empty. So now coming back down to the shade cache through the puddle again. We had a lot of rain for the week before this. We had about 5 or 6 days straight of just pouring rain, and all of Alberta was flooded. It hurt companies planting in Alberta all over the place. Slowed down production quite a bit. And you can see I'm pulling over to deal with some texting and stuff. Don't text while you're driving, not safe. Yeah, I've got 2 phones. It's kind of annoying. They're going constantly. Although it's good in a sense to have texting available now, because all my foremen have cell phones, and so we communicate with each other a lot through texting. Good to have unlimited texting plans. So we're using that a lot when we're out of radio range. So here I am back in the cache, making sure everything is all neat and tidy. There's no problem boxes. And you can see I picked up one box and put it in a garbage bag there where the bottom had blown out. So I've got that in the truck right now. I'm going to take it out to a foreman and make sure it gets planted right away. And Sean is the closest person using that seed lot. So tidy up, and here you go, Sean. Here's a present. Go plant it. Sean, while I'm here talking to him, mentions that two of his newer people don't have inserts in their bags. And I mean, it's been really rainy for the last several days, so up till now it probably would not have been a big problem. But it's going to get sunny here, and so he's worried about those 2 people without the inserts. So I said I'd run back to camp and get some extras. So here I am going back to camp. It was nice that the shade cache was really close to camp. It was only about 5 kilometers away, maybe, just across the highway, down behind the airport. This is all filmed in the Whitecourt vicinity, just outside of Whitecourt, when we were working for a company there in July. Okay, so I've got my when I was just checking a spreadsheet there for a second, you could probably see that's when Wilson called me to double check the density on a block. The contract that we were on featured a different density on every single block pretty much, so we had to be careful with that. So here I am back out at Sean's block. Got a jerry can in the back, topping up his quad for him. He's just talking about how things are going out on the block, drop off the inserts to him, and then rearranging some camera gear. Yeah, okay, so what I was using here for the day, I had a strap-on camera that would go on top of my head. It's a GoPro camera, high-def camera, pretty slick, very, very, very cool camera. You can check it out on the internet if you're interested in that sort of thing, but it's good for sports. A lot of, you know, pro skiers, surfers, all sorts of people like that will use this exact model of camera just because it's really durable in the elements and easy to use, high quality, that sort of stuff. So the camera itself can hold about 2 hours of footage. The batteries themselves last for about 2 hours. And so obviously to film a 16-hour day, I had to think about this a little bit in advance. What I did was I got 4 batteries, I guess, total, 3 extra batteries. And so I had all of them charged up. And what I'd do is every 2 hours here, I'd stop, dump the footage into the laptop, switch a battery, and then in the middle of the day, I had to stop for a little while to charge all 4 batteries at once. Okay, so here I've come into Whitecourt. I'm going to do some errands at the Cal Tire first, and went to pick up a quad tire that was flat that we'd left there. They hadn't been able to repair it yet because it needed an inner tube. So here I am. I just ran up the street to a place where I could buy an inner tube for the quad tire, and now I'm going back to Cal Tire. Here you go. There's your inner tube. Okay, taking off again. Next errand in Whitecourt, going to a recycle place. And of course it's not open yet, so I leave all the recyclables. These are refundables, not recyclables, which is even, well, it doesn't matter. We try to recycle almost everything, like cardboard even, if we can. Anyway, so I just left them there, so hopefully some hobo came along and found them and was able to cash them in and spend the money on cheap cooking sherry. Okay, heading back through Whitecourt. Where are we going next? Looks like I'm going out to the card lock. Yep. Okay, here we are at the card lock. One of my favorite places. And by that I mean I'm at it all the time. The amount of fuel a camp goes through in a summer is just staggering. Like 30,000, 40, 50,000 liters sometimes in a summer. I mean, we've got usually... My camp's usually got about 10 trucks, so certainly adds up all the kilometers we put on. So I filled a couple jerry cans, filled the truck. You could see I was tying those jerry cans into the back of the truck for safety. Now, I am driving west of town on the... it's not the Yellowhead because we're in Whitecourt. It's the... I think it's highway... it's either 43 or 32. Anyway, we're heading west up towards the Fox Creek Grand Prairie area. I'm certainly not going anywhere near that far today, although we did plant some blocks up by Fox Creek, which is about an hour west of Whitecourt. The area I'm going to right now is called Baseline, and if you're familiar with this part of the province, as you're going west from town, you'll go through a big valley and you'll cross the Chickadee River at one point. And you'll come to the Chickadee Burner, which is right here. So I'm here in Greg's camp to double check some stuff. He's not there. So I'm doubling back to the Baseline area, which is just a couple kilometers to the east of where Greg's camp was at that burner. Yeah, I'm going up to Baseline because 2 of my crews are working in Baseline today. So Andrew and Mike's crew did the blocks in this area, and I think I'm on my way to visit. Andrew first. Oh, stopping for another text. The problem with texting and cell phones is they're not as useful in BC because the cell phone penetration still isn't great. Now, it's certainly better than it was 5 years ago, but Alberta is far, far advanced. Thanks to the oil patch, that was Mike. Thanks to the oil patch, there's a lot of cell phone reception all over Alberta, which is great for us. Okay, so here I've got Mike, the company checker, and Andrew, the foreman. And so we're just talking. I'm going to take that red trailer away that he used to bring some trees out today. And so here we are hooking up the trailer. Little group effort. Double checking to make sure that the chains are on properly. And away we go. And there's a few boxes in here that I have to deliver to Greg's camp just up the road. So I think that's going to be the next stop. Although I should pass Mike's block here in a minute first on the way out. At 14 times speed, I feel like I'm going about 1,000 kilometers an hour right now. And there's Mike. Get out and talk to him for a minute. Double check to make sure I've got the right boxes. And Mike's got a flat tire. So I started to help him with changing, and then we discovered that for whatever reason there was no key for the spare tire in the truck, which is frustrating. That's the sort of thing we should notice at the start of the season, not near the end. Anyway, his tire wasn't flat, so I said, well, give it a shot, see if you can make it in. He's got an air pump. See if you can make it into town without driving on the rim. And I've got the trailer, and I'm heading out to visit, well, first to drop off the trees to Greg's camp. And, of course, Greg is out on the road somewhere, too. I don't imagine that he spent much time sitting in camp eating cookies either. So here I'm unloading some boxes for him. You can see I'm opening them up so that they're exposed to the elements, but you can see the netting over top of his cache. That black netting is called shade cloth. It's good because it keeps the direct sunlight off the trees. You know, a little light comes through, of course, but it keeps the direct sunlight off, yet it allows rain through because it's porous, and it's actually it's surprisingly effective. On a hot day, you get underneath there, it's a lot cooler than it is in the surrounding area. So here I am on my way to Zach's block after leaving Greg. And I'm taking the back roads here. Zach's actually pretty far away. He's almost an hour drive. But instead of going back into town and then south past the airport quite a ways, what I'm doing is going from the Chickadee burner. I'm going down the Windfall Road and through the back roads, which is it's a shorter distance overall, which is nice. You can see I'm having to stop a couple times and deal with texting. These back roads are a little bit confusing, but the oil patch just puts so many roads through in all over Alberta, in a lot of places, that it's just it's almost like there's another city in the woods. The streets are so complex, but of course it's also fairly easy to get lost in some areas. So we're still driving towards Zach's block. I do a lot of driving during the day. The average season, I usually put on an average of 300 to 400 kilometers a day. Oh, there I am changing some batteries and stuff. And I had to stop there for a second to grab one of our planters who had a bad knee, so I'm taking her back to camp. She twisted her knee. While I was there, that was one of the places where I stopped and shut down for a few minutes and dumped some of this footage onto the computer. So anyway, I've left Zach's block now, and I'm on my way to camp to drop off the planter. And I also got a radio call, or a cell phone call, saying that the food truck from Cisco was stuck in camp. So I guess when I drop the planter off, I'm also going to have to try and tow out this truck. Now, I was hoping to use the red trailer to do some other stuff, so when I got into camp, I looked at the Cisco truck, and I was hoping it was not stuck very, very badly. Now, it turned out that I was wrong, but at first I thought, okay, maybe this is possible. So I've still got the trailer on my truck, and I'm trying to just back up a little bit and see if I can pull him out. Nope, not a chance. Not a chance. So after trying that for a few minutes, I decided, well, we're gonna have to come with a different approach. We'll have to get rid of the trailer. I think I'm using 2 tow chains now to. I haven't taken the trailer off yet. I'm still thinking that maybe it's possible to pull him out just by backing up a little bit. No. So you can see I got on the phone at that point, and I think I actually called for assistance at this point because, you know, the Cisco truck's a pretty big truck, and I was starting to realize now this is probably stuck a little bit worse than it looks. So here I am taking off the trailer, so my own truck's a little bit more maneuverable, and I'm going to be waiting for reinforcements here. I think it was Mike that I called first, and yeah, it must have been Mike because he was close. He was nearby in town, having just got that tire fixed. So here I'm waiting for reinforcements, just fiddling with stuff. Spooled my winch back in properly. What's going on? Okay, I just went out and turned around. What am I doing? Oh, I guess I'm moving the trailer to a different location. Yeah, move the trailer so it wasn't in the way when everything else is going on. See, the problem with this camp too is the landing. Like the licensee actually brought in a lot of loads of gravel to make the landing less muddy, but even so, it was really muddy, especially after a week of rain. So here I am just wandering around camp, double checking some things while I'm waiting for help. And I just grabbed, carrying a propane tank there, and moving that around. Calling on the radio, I think, to see what's going on, sitting and waiting. Double checking stuff in the back of the truck. Switching some jerry cans. Dropped off the full jerry cans. Looked for some more empty ones. Oh yeah, there we go. Putting the propane tank in the back of the truck now so I can... That's the empty tank. So I can go town, fill it up later on. And here comes Mike. So what we're going to do is we're going to put 2 trucks in a chain, 2 pickups, trying to pull it out. You can't have them in parallel. You can't have each truck hooked up to the one that's stuck. Logistically, it just usually doesn't work. So what we do is we put them in series. So Mike's truck is going to pull on mine. My truck's going to pull on the Cisco truck. We're going to dig out underneath the front tires a little bit more. That was the whole problem. The front end of his truck had dug in and dropped down, and so the metal at the bottom of his engine, stuff like that, the frame, was actually in the mud, and so it was causing some friction there. So at this point I was starting to think this could be a pretty big project, and it turned out I was right. So anyway, with the trucks in series, basically the tow ropes that we have are generally strong enough, because we had tried to get heavy duty tow ropes. They're strong enough to be a lot stronger than what a single truck could pull. So the pulling power of the pickup is the limiting factor. So what happens is we put 2 trucks back to back, and it gives us the equivalent of like 1 truck that's twice as strong. So anyway, we had tried with 2 trucks here, and it didn't budge. So I called and was looking for reinforcements. And occasionally, we've had to go with as many as 3 trucks before in series to pull something out. And it's amazing how well it works. Now the problem is, with this kind of thing, tow ropes are more likely to break from sudden pressure than they are with constant gradual pressure. So what happens is we is instead of trying to jerk it out, we just very, very slowly, each of us puts power on, usually in like 4-wheel drive or something. So 4-low. 4-low has a different gear ratio, so it's got more power for the vehicle. And just very gently and slowly try to pull them out. So at this point, we've got lots of reinforcements. We've actually got 4 trucks We didn't think we'd never tried to pull out a vehicle with 4 trucks pulling at the same time before. So I've got Greg Mancuso, the other supervisor, and I've got Jim Logan, who's our project coordinator. They both came. I called them. They were nearby, so they came to help out and watch. So we tried with 3 trucks, and 3 trucks did not do it. So I guess what happened was we tried pulling with Mike. We called Jim, did a little bit of digging while we were waiting. Greg and David arrived, so we tried there. A tow rope broke, but then Jim arrived right afterwards, so we decided to try with 4 trucks. So here we're pulling out some extra ropes, and what's going to happen here? How are we doing this? Oh, we got him out. Okay, so what happened was we tried with 4 trucks. A tow rope broke. We switched in another one. Tried again with 4 trucks. The hitch of my truck sheared off, so a little bit dangerous. Anyway, we got a new hitch. Jim was pretty sure that we were going to be able to do it. We did move the truck a few inches, so we tried again, and 4 trucks did it. We got the Cisco truck out. So I was just talking to the mill representatives there for a second, talking about Greg's overflow block, and now everyone's dispersed and gone back to work. Cisco truck's on his way, and I am driving down to show Greg. Greg and I, our 2 camps are basically sharing a big contract, and so he's planting a block in my section tomorrow. One of his crews, David, is coming in to do a helicopter block in my area, just to make things easier for both camps. He's running out of ground. I've got more than enough ground and can use the help. So Greg and David and I are coming down right now to look at a block, and so now Greg and I are sitting talking. No, I want to turn the truck around. So we're sitting there talking for a second right now. Well, David is out wandering around the block, checking it out, trying to figure out where he's going to put his trees, do the helicopter drops, all that sort of stuff, figure out how he's going to set up the planters for the next day. It's good to be prepared in advance, of course. So we're talking about how to use the helicopter for the next few days, all that sort of stuff. And now we're on our way back out, and they're wondering about trees and stuff. So I said, well, let's come on up to the main cache and we'll confirm the seed lots that you're using, stuff like that. So we're driving away from the block and heading up to the main cache, which will take a couple minutes. Well, it's pretty close. Our blocks on this contract were almost all within 25-minute, 30-minute drive, which was kind of nice. We've been on, I mean, there's obviously better contracts with shorter drives, but we've been on some contracts the last few years, especially like West Fraser Hinton. That's a terrible contract. It's so spread out, so many kilometers, so much wasted time driving. And working Kamloops, we had a lot of drives well over an hour there too. Anyway, so here we are in my main shade cache, and I'm just talking to Greg and David and showing them where the trees are that have to go, the particular seed lot that goes into that block that David's going to plant for me tomorrow. And now we're sitting here trying to figure out how to utilize the helicopter for the next several days, because not only are Greg and I sharing the contract, unfortunately, we are, for the most part, sharing one helicopter. The helicopter company, Airborne, has a couple machines available, but we found that the smaller helicopters, like the Bells, the Jet Rangers, whatever, 205s, 206s, they're too small. And so we generally try to use an A-Star or a B2, something bigger. And they only had one of those for us, so the 2 camps had to kind of share back and forth, and we were trying to do everything without the smaller machines. So we're just talking about our plan for the next few days, and still planning, looking at spreadsheets, looking at calendars, trying to figure out how to get done in time. We actually discussed this for quite a while, and we were on the phone, I think, to the mill representatives and to the helicopter company a couple times during this conversation. Just trying to plan. Basically, we're trying to plan 2 weeks worth of workout in advance to make sure it all works. So at this point, now we've got it all sorted out, and there's a pile of empty boxes here on the side of the road that one of my foremen left when he was loading trees. So I'm just loading those up. I'm going to try and take those to the dump for him. Strapping them in so they don't blow out on the highway. And away we go. Heading back to camp. And so now I'm in camp and hooking up the trailer again because I'm going to try and do a dump run. And I think that pause there, I was on the phone for a second. Mike called to tell me that his alternator was dying. So he was definitely having a lot of truck problems this shift. So anyway, I suggest he take it to a repair place. And I called Jim and asked Jim if he was in the area. He was. And I asked if he could pick up Mike at the repair shop and bring Mike back out to camp, which is where I was sitting. And that way Mike could grab our spare truck that was sitting in camp and use that to go pick up his crew at the end of the day, because it would take a few hours to get his truck done. We weren't sure that it could be fixed today. So here I am working on filling the red trailer with garbage. The amount of garbage that a planting camp generates is just staggering. I think during the course of a season we could fill between 2 and 3 reefer loads, like tractor trailer loads, full of empty tree boxes alone. And then plus that, there's all the camp garbage and whatnot. Unfortunately, in a lot of places, tree boxes cannot be recycled. That seems really strange, such a green industry, reforestation, that all this waste, like you think about it, there's hundreds and hundreds of tractor trailer loads of cardboard from tree boxes going to dumps every year. It's because there's a really high wax content on these boxes because they have to be used outside, and obviously normal cardboard, once it gets wet, would be useless. So our tree boxes have a lot of wax coating on them to keep them functional in the rain, and that's why they can't be recycled. Kind of frustrating. There's a few places in Alberta and BC that will take small amounts of wax cardboard and have managed to recycle that. They kind of feed it in with the regular cardboard, but it's pretty rare, pretty hard to find. So here I am on my way through White Court. Dumps on the other side of White Court. So I've got the red trailer on the back of my truck, and we're heading out to the dump. So this little section is going to be a little bit boring. Yeah, in a perfect world, I mean, we try to recycle what we can. There's a lot of cardboard that comes in through the kitchen, all the cases for the fruits and vegetables and stuff like that. Quite often there's cardboard that comes in the reefers because when we've got a truckload of trees arriving, they usually either put wood slats or cardboard flats on each layer of trees, like between the rows of trees, to just to keep them separated a little bit better, sometimes for airflow. For different reasons. Anyway, so all that cardboard, there's a fair amount of that too, and that we generally try to recycle. We try to recycle all the refundables, obviously, all the beer cans and empty pop bottles, water bottles. We try to recycle recyclable stuff that is not refundable, such as milk jugs, tin cans from the kitchen, all that sort of stuff. I mean, tree planters are a pretty environmentally conscious group, and so it's not too hard to do that. The only frustrating thing is sometimes it's not worth recycling because our camps can be pretty far away from civilization. So if you've got, say you manage to collect an entire pickup truckload full of empty of cardboard or stuff that could be recycled, is it worth it to recycle it, to drive an hour into town to a dump or to a recycling station to deal with that? Sometimes it's not. It's worse for the environment to spend all the fuel that you're driving for that hour than it is to just burn the cardboard. So, it's a tough call sometimes. Anyway, here I am at the dump, Throwing out the garbage. Throwing out boxes and boxes. Empty tree boxes. Flats. Takes a while to unload. Yeah, still chipping away at it. There we go. Now the red trailer's empty. Okay, waiting to get weighed in. Sign for the load of garbage that I dropped off. We have to pay to dump our garbage. It varies. In Whitecourt, it's around $50, $60 a ton at the moment. Some places are higher, some places are lower. And here I am just before I go onto the highway, getting out and double checking all the connections on the trailer. You do not want your trailer to come off when you're on the road. Unfortunately, it seems to happen at least once a season in each camp. So that's just a word of warning for planters, future foremen, and current foremen. Always double check the connections on your trailer really carefully. If you're not positive, get somebody else who's also experienced to double check them for you. So here I am coming back towards Whitecourt. The dump is east of Whitecourt, about 20 minutes outside of town, so it'll be at this fast motion speed. It'll be about a minute and a half of driving. I think my next chore when I come back into town here is I'm going to go get that propane tank filled. Yes. Yep, so here I'm at the Petrocan, and this guy's filling the propane tank. There's two types of propane tanks. Some of them have a valve up at the top. I forget what it's called. It's like a pressure safety valve, and like a bleeder valve or something. I don't know. Anyway, if you've got one of those, it's good because you can just fill the propane tank right in the back of your pickup. The older type of propane tanks that don't have those safety valves, you have to take them out and you put them on a scale that weighs the tank as it's being filled. So it's a little bit more cumbersome process. Okay, propane tank's filled. Now I'm at Cal Tire, and I'm checking to see if I can pick up that quad tire. Yep, it's ready. Seemed like I was fixing a tire at Cal Tire just about every second day all summer. We get a lot of flats, both on the quads and on the trucks. Okay, so here I am driving through Whitecourt, and I'm going to be heading back out to camp now. It was really nice. This camp was very, very close to town. Normally, we're at least half an hour. Sometimes, I don't know, maybe an hour and a half. An hour to an hour and a half is common to be that far from town. Very, very rarely we'll be extremely far from town. I've been in camps that are 5 or 6 hours away from town. But this particular camp, 5 or 6 minutes outside of Whitecourt, is just beautiful. So easy to do errands. So here I am returning to camp, and I think what I'm going to do is drop off the red trailer. I don't have time to do another dump run today. I generally try to do a dump run about every second day just to keep on top of it. Although sometimes it doesn't make sense for me to be doing dump runs during the shift because there's other stuff I can do to keep planting running more smoothly. And if that's the case, then the garbage just piles up for the whole 4-day shift or whatever, and the foreman help by taking some of it to the dump on the day off. Okay, so here I am putting the full propane tank back into place and doing some switching of jerry cans, whatnot. And so I've dropped off the full jerry cans, double checking some densities and numbers on the spreadsheet. I'm on the phone, and here we go, off to the races again. What I'm doing now is I'm going to be driving up towards Whitecourt, and I've got a couple more jerry cans that the cooks emptied out during the day, and so I'll stop into the card lock first and fill those. I sat at this intersection for a long time. I think I was there for 5 or 6 minutes. They really need a traffic light at that one. Okay, so here we are in the card lock, filling those jerry cans and filling my truck again. Just amazing the number of kilometers I put on trucks. I was saying earlier that some seasons I average 300, most seasons I average 300, 400 kilometers per day of driving. I've had days where I've driven over 1,000 kilometers in a single day, just running around, moving quads for foremen, moving trees, moving people, stuff like that. Just like a normal day trying to keep the camp running. And yeah, it's unbelievable that you could put on that kind of mileage. Okay, so now I've left the card lock. I'm heading west out of Whitecourt again. And I'm heading back out to Baseline, where Mike and Andrew are. Driving past the scale house. Those scales are kind of annoying. All of our canopy trucks legally have to stop in the scales. And so it's kind of a pain in the ass. We got pulled over at one point this summer. Now, let me preface this by saying that we're trying to do everything right. And so we've studied the regulations and we try to make sure we meet them all that sort of stuff. Just talking to Mike and Andrew doing some planning. Anyway, we try to meet all the regulations. We got stopped once this summer, and one of our foremen got a fine because he had a quad in the back of a canopy truck that was wedged in with about 25 planting hockey bags and stuff like that because it was during camp move. And the quad could not move. The canopy door had a lock on it, and yet the guy at the scale gave him a $600 fine because the quad was legally supposed to have 2 straps holding it in place in the back of the truck. Now, obviously, that regulation was meant for open back trucks because if you got to roll over on the highway, whatever, you don't want the quad flying if possible. I guess that's what I assume the regulations for. Anyway, it can be taken to extremes, so make sure if you're a planter, fill out those logbooks very carefully. Make sure you understand how to do it properly. Be careful how your trucks, what condition your trucks are in when you're going through those scales, because you're going to get nailed eventually. Anyway, the good thing is that the open back trucks weigh little enough that they do not usually have to go through the scales. Technically, with a quad in the back of my truck and 6 people in the truck, yes, I weigh enough that I would have to go into a scale. But usually I can ignore it, whereas all the crew trucks have to go and get weighed in every time. So what we're doing here, Andrew is sorting out some boxes. We've got different seed lots here, remember, and we're trying to shuffle some trees around. And yeah, and try and organize what's going on here. Mike and Andrew's crews often work together a little bit, help each other out. So they're collaborating right now, trying to figure out how to finish up certain sections of certain blocks. And so we just loaded one of the quads into the back of my truck so I can move it somewhere. And you'll notice I used a heavy ratchet strap, very visible, to make sure it's strapped into place. And now I'm on my way. I guess the intent of that quad pickup was to get the quad back to camp so it could be used in a different area tomorrow. So I'm not actually delivering the quad anywhere in specific right now. So going out to visit Greg. And here's Greg in his little home away from home. So we're talking again for a little while, dropping off some maps for him, trying to finalize some more details on blocks that are being done in the next couple days. A lot of planning has to be done. Greg, when he started working as a supervisor, I asked him about a week or 2 into the job how things were going, what was happening that he didn't really expect before he started, working in that position. And the first thing he said was, well, I found that I have to carry a pen and a piece of paper around with me everywhere because I have to write down about 150 things a day. And that doesn't surprise me. So we're still talking about upcoming blocks, numbers, production, crew productions, where to shift people around. Mostly helicopter. The helicopter was the most annoying part of this contract, as always. Just trying to keep things organized, running smoothly, keep it being utilized full time. And of course the weather didn't help. So I've left Greg's camp and now I'm heading back towards Whitecourt. I must be getting around supper time at this point. Usually what we do is we're up for breakfast. 6 o'clock is when breakfast starts, and the goal is to have breakfast finished by 6:30 and have the trucks on the road at 6:45. Some of the smart planters get up earlier. They get up around 5:30 so they can start their lunches and stuff like that. And then we work till about 5, come back to camp, and supper is usually around 6:30, depends on the time of season. And then after that, the planters tend to stay awake for an hour or so, but then go to bed fairly early, whereas the foreman and myself use the time after supper to start getting organized for the next day. So here I am driving back towards Whitecourt, and you can probably see that the plume of smoke. I wasn't sure what that was, so I had a few extra minutes to spare, so I thought I'd drive into town and see what was going on, what was on fire. And it was a big apartment building downtown, so just stopped for a minute, took a couple photos, nothing too exciting. So turned around and decided to go back out to camp for supper. And here I am in Whitecourt, driving carefully. You gotta be careful. Whitecourt's a tough town to work in because they have unmarked photo radar trucks, mobile trucks, that usually on any given day, there's definitely one of them in town somewhere, and it's not a big town, so you're going to pass it several times if you're doing errands. And sometimes they have 2 of them. So it's you have to really be aware you do not speed in Whitecourt. Do not speed anywhere. A lot of Alberta towns use this technology, but Whitecourt and Hinton are probably the 2 worst ones. Anyway, somehow we made it through the season without a single ticket among our entire group of trucks, which I was impressed with. That's not usually the case. So here we are back in camp. Almost supper time. And actually, from the relaxed look of the cooks, I would say maybe supper's already over and I missed it. Well, I didn't miss it. The cooks are always good to me. They always set something aside in case I'm late. So on this particular night, Jim Logan was going to come out and have a quick camp meeting with everyone to give out some T-shirts to everybody. And so here I am in the mess tent telling people, yeah, we're going to have a camp meeting out in the main entrance. I mean, it's nice weather here tonight, so we just decided to have it outside. And while I'm waiting for everyone to finish dinner and get ready, grabbing some chainsaw gear that we need after supper, there was Sean asking a question. And here we are at the meeting. So Jim's talking to the planters, getting ready to hand out some shirts and stuff. Lots of T-shirts, lots of excitement. We also had some prizes here for people from the previous season who were the top planters in camp. Like the top few people got jackets, fancier items of clothing. And here's Jim talking a bit about the plans for the next couple of weeks as we're starting to wrap up the season. We're getting, this is probably mid-July, I guess. And I can't remember the exact day. It might have been July 21st that I filmed this, in which case there was about 10 days of work left. That kind of makes sense. I think this was the first day of the second last shift. So now we're just chatting after the camp meeting. A couple of the foremen talking about plans for after supper. Okay, back in the truck, time to get back to work. Planters will be going to sleep soon, but my day lasts a little bit longer. I usually work till about between 11 and midnight. It's a pretty long schedule, working 5 in the morning till 11 or midnight, sometimes later. Pretty much every day of the summer, even the days that the planters take a day off, I still have to work. Trying to stay ahead of them, keeping things organized. So what I'm doing right now, David's crew, their camp had their day off today, different day than us, and so they're just on their way back out to town, out to their camp, and they're stopping to grab the trees that they'll need to plant on the helicopter block tomorrow. So I'm just working with them to make sure the right trees get loaded, make sure they grab the right seed lot, right number of boxes. And now I'm down with Wilson. So David's crew's on their way back out to their camp, and now I'm down talking to Wilson. What I'm doing is I'm going out with him to show him where his block is for the next day. This actually might have been filmed on July 15th, not 21st. This is the first day of the third last shift, I think. 14th was a day off. 15th, first day of the shift. Yeah, I think I filmed this on July 15th, 2011. Anyway, so here we go, and we're going out to look at the... Well, not the block that he's working on the next day. He knows where the block is, but he had some chainsaw work to get into the back part of the block. So we're going to go out there and deal with that together. Driving. Always driving. Okay, we should be almost there. Okay. So, we're at the block, and I'm putting on my chainsaw safety gear, the chaps, gloves, hard hat, earmuffs, visor, prepping the saw, all that sort of stuff. Now we ran into a problem here because I had to drive the quad in, and I wasn't sure how to put the camera on the helmet, so I just turned it off for the trip into the block. So here we are, magically inside the block already. And so Wilson's got the camera now while I'm doing some chainsawing, because that seemed like it would make more sense, because I can't really wear the camera while I'm wearing a hard hat and visor and all that sort of stuff. So I'm just cutting up some trees that were in the way for him, doing some bridging, and now we're talking about how to get back out, and we came to the conclusion that I can put the camera on the helmet. So on the ride back out to the trucks, you'll actually see the quad trip that I was taking. It's not too far, it's only about half a kilometer. He's walking there along behind me. We only had one quad. I think his quad was dead at this point. In fact, I think we're about to drive past it here. Yep, there it was. And so now I'm dealing with putting all the safety gear away, putting the quad back in the truck while I'm waiting for him to walk out. And there I'm taking a few photos of some of the heavy equipment while I'm waiting for him. And we're done with that chore. So I'm on my way back to camp now. Driving along. We had a big washout right here where, yeah, you can see it right there. I stopped to take a few photos of that too. That was a pretty big one. The truck could have definitely fallen into that quite easily. And that again is from those 5 or 6 straight days of rain that we had in earlier July. And so now I'm heading back towards the highway. And on the highway, heading north up towards camp. You can see it's a pretty busy day for me as a supervisor. A lot of stuff happens, which is good. I mean, it keeps the job really interesting. You know, the rest of the year sort of seems to go a little bit slowly, but once day one of planting happens, it seems like, you know, I blink my eyes and the season's almost over. Just every day, constantly on the run. So here we are back in camp, and I'm going to talk to Shelley for a bit about the plans for tomorrow as I'm unloading the quad in camp, because a different truck is going to take that out tomorrow. And there's Andrew asking a few questions. And here I am grabbing another propane tank, another empty one. Loading that up. And so here I am talking to Shelley and Joanne, discussing the flight plans for tomorrow, trying to figure out how we're going to split everybody up, how to keep things organized, what trees are left. You can see the map on the opposite wall of the trailer there with all those green blocks. Those are all the blocks that we're doing in just one area. We actually had about 7, 8, 9, 10 maybe areas that we had blocks in, all around the Whitecourt region. Although the one that is on the wall in front of us, I think probably had the most blocks, the biggest number of trees out of those 10 areas. And it was also, luckily, it was the closest one, right basically across the road behind, across the highway from camp, down in behind the airport. Okay, just doing some prep, filling with batteries and stuff, checking the cooler again, seeing if the temperatures were any better. Had some real headaches with that cooler there for a couple days in July. And into the mess tent for a piece of dessert. And I think it's starting to get a little dusky here. You can tell the lighting's changed. Anyway, I'm about to head into town again. Everyone else in camp, pretty much, except for Shelley, is probably, and the foreman. All the rest of the people are probably asleep right now, except for Shelley and the foreman, is what I was trying to say, and myself. So I'm on my way into town. There were a few people up using the internet in camp, and I was having problems getting online. So I usually find I have so much email to check and stuff like that. Sometimes it's faster to run to town and deal with things with a wireless connection in town. So what I do is just stop outside one of the businesses that lets us use their wireless. And I also wanted to take the opportunity to clean my windshields and my lights and my brakes very carefully because of our safety audit the next day. So went out to the card lock, cleaned the truck up first, and now I'm heading into town, and I'm just going to park outside one of the businesses here and use the internet for 10 minutes or so. That's why I try to get up and do a lot of my internet stuff between 5 in the morning and 5:30 in the morning, because it's before the planters get up and nobody else is using it, so it's easier to get stuff done quickly. And nothing too important there. So here I am on my way back through town, heading back out to camp, and the day's almost over. So at this point it's probably about 11 o'clock at this point. I'm going to end up going back to camp, and the lighting's starting to fade here a little bit. So I think the only other thing I'm going to do before I take the camera off is I'm going to end up taking the topping up the windshield washer fluid in my truck just with water. It's summer, so I just use water. Tend to go through a lot of washer fluid during the course of a season. Seems like I'm filling it almost every day, a couple times a day sometimes. And there we go. Anyway, that's approximately what I would do in a typical day. It's probably of interest to note that I didn't actually get out on a block. You didn't see any planters working in this. You didn't see anyone planting trees. You didn't see me walking on blocks. I mean, that's another big part of my job. Some days I do that almost exclusively. Some days I'm almost doing errands. You know, I could probably film 3 separate days of my life and as a tree planting supervisor, and all 3 would be very unique and very different. But anyway, this was my 2011 version. Hope you enjoyed it, and maybe I'll do